Hello class, I want to discuss a really important, a really key concept with Oracle databases, and that's starting up your database and shutting it down. This startup and shutdown is a really basic DBA task, so it's important that you understand it. And if you're going to be an Oracle DBA, this is something that you're going to be doing a lot of. DBAs are starting up and shutting down databases all the time. So it's important to understand what's happening with this startup and shutdown. So if you look at this diagram, you see that you can either issue a startup command from SQL Plus, and that will automatically take you through three phases. It first will take you through this no mount phase where the background processes and memory structures are allocated and started. Then it'll take you through the mount phase, which will open the control files, and then it'll take you through database open phase, which opens the data files and the online redo logs. And at that point, your database is completely open. And so when you issue a startup, it actually takes you through three phases: no mount, mount, and open. And so you can also issue these startup commands by themselves. You can manually run these three commands. You can issue a startup no mount, and then an alter database mount, and an alter database open, and that's equivalent to just running the startup command. Now, why would you want to run these commands separately? Well, there are certain backup and recovery scenarios, especially with recovery, where you may want your database in mount mode. Say you've had some sort of a media failure and one of your data files is bad, and you need to mount your database and issue some restore and recover commands. So that's a really key reason for understanding these three phases. And also, if you're troubleshooting a database that won't start, you need to know about these three phases, because you may not even be able to start up your database in a no mount mode. And so then you have to look at the alert log and troubleshoot that. So let's compare this to what's going on over here. When you first issue the startup no mount, say if you're going to run these three commands separately, you issue the startup no mount. The Oracle relational database software reads the SP file, and that gives it information like how to size the memory area and which background process to start. Some of the background processes, it's going to start by default, but if you've enabled certain features of Oracle, then there are other background processes that will get started as well. And so at that point, when you've done the startup no mount, you have just the memory area allocated and background processes started. When you issue an alter database mount, what that does is it opens up the control file. The control file contains the information, stores information about the physical makeup or the physical characteristics of the database, like where are the online redo logs, where are the data files. And then when you issue an alter database open, that opens up the data files and it opens up the online redo logs. And at that point, your database is completely open. Now let's pop over to my Linux VM and let's issue some of these startup and shutdown commands. So if I run this process status and filter for the system monitor, I can see that there are no system monitors running on this Linux VM. There are no databases running. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize my OS parameters that need to be initialized in order for me to work with an Oracle database. So I do that with a dot space profile. And then I need to set my Oracle SID to the database that I'm going to be working with, which in this case is going to be DB101. I can verify that. So that's DB101. So now I can start up my database, connect to sys. I can verify that I'm sys. And now I can issue the startup command. So at this point, the Oracle instance, when it was started, that's the memory area has been allocated and the background processes have started. And then when the database is mounted, that's when the control file is opened. And then when the database is open, that's when the data files and online redo logs are open. Now we can issue a shutdown command here. And usually the way Oracle DBAs shut down a database is with shutdown immediate. The immediate tells Oracle if there are any users connected to the database, it'll stop those processes, those connections. It'll kill those connections, and it'll roll back any transactions that are open at the time. And this is the normal way the DBA shut down databases. And so in the class, if you want to shut down one of your databases, just make sure your Oracle SID is set to the SID that you want to be working with. It's usually going to be DB101, but it might be Spock. And get into SQL Plus as sys, and then issue the shutdown immediate command. And so this does the opposite of what the startup command did. First, it closes the data files and the online redo logs, and then it stops, and then it closes the control file with this dismount, and then it stops the instance and unallocates the memory area with the instance shutdown. So again, this is a super critical feature or super critical task that an Oracle DBA needs to be familiar with. If you get a chance, try this on one of your databases. Try shutting it down if it started, and then try starting it back up, and make sure you understand how to do that. Let me know if there are any questions.